Good afternoon, everyone. We are back. It is Wednesday, August 23rd. I am joined with Chuck once again for another conversation with you all about Best Ball Mania 4 here on Underdog Fantasy. If you have not yet signed up for Underdog, we have our promo code on the bottom of the screen here in the banner for you. You can sign up today with promo code OCCUPY, get matched 100% on your first deposit up to $100, and start playing some contests here on Underdog with up to $200. Chuck, how are you today?
I'm doing great. We got a couple small pieces of news, but ready to dive right back into talking about some of the players that maybe we didn't get to talk about last night. So pretty excited to still talk about football. We got 2 more weeks to do these the right way, so pretty excited for this.
Yeah, and as we said in yesterday's stream, we're going to do our best to jam as many of these streams as possible onto our schedule here on the channel. So if you want to watch those when we're live, please make sure you're subscribed so you'll get notified when we schedule those as they come out. We're doing at least 2 to 3 of these a week, and we will obviously have some videos and shows for those of you who are into daily fantasy and preseason football for the 3 remaining days of preseason football here, kicking off tomorrow with 2 games. Chuck, I'm going to jump into a Best Ball Mania 4 here, and we shall see. Well, we're going to start right away. I was the last man in on this pool, so we'll see what kind of pick luck. And, I talked on the last show about how I haven't had a ton of picks at the end of the draft board. Well, today we're going to have a team in that range. I'm going to be picking 12th overall here. So I actually am kind of happy about this because I want to get exposure to some of these players down here.
Yeah, that's one thing I mentioned yesterday, that I was getting the 2 pick at twice the expected rate. Like 1 through 4 were my top 4 picks, and I wasn't getting 10 through 12. And so that's why my CD Lamb, Devontae Adams, like Nick Chubb, Amon-Ra exposures were a little bit lower than I would have liked. But last 50 drafts, variance always corrects itself. So been getting a lot of these late end drafts. The player I really wish I could get more of is Devontae Adams, because I think he's a little bit too cheap. But there's still players I want to take at 12 and 13 before him. I mostly want to take Devontae like 14 through 17, I guess. But we'll see. We'll see what you do here. Do you have any ideas of how you want to take these first 2 picks?
I mean, we talked about this on the last show. McCaffrey 101. Haven't seen that in quite a while. What year is it again? I think I want more Amon-Ra St. Brown exposure. Has been one of my favorite leverage plays on the board, but as we talked about a little bit when we started yesterday, he isn't really falling to this 12-13 pick range anymore. In fact, he's starting to go 7th, 8th, 9th quite a bit more, since some analysts in the industry have sort of put it out there that he's got tremendous upside. Jameson Williams suspended, no clear wide receiver 2 there. Sam Laporta at tight end might be the legit second option in the passing game. All of that kind of spells a really, really monster season coming once again for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I guess my favorite strategy here is, if Amon-Ra St. Brown is still available, I want him. But today, because I have no Nick Chubb yet in my portfolio, this is team, I think, either 64 or 65 for me in Best Ball Mania 4. I would like to get Nick Chubb if I can.
Yeah, I like it. When I was ripping a few puppy threes last week, I got a lot of back end picks, and it was so frequent where 12 and 13 were just Amon-Ra, Nick Chubb, and in ADP, basically in ADP order, it's Nick Chubb, then Amon-Ra, but it's typically just taking those 2. Didn't feel the need to really mix it up, just take what I thought was the best 2 picks available.
To your point on Devontae Adams, at the beginning of draft season for Best Ball, he was kind of the chalk pick here at 11-12, but he's definitely fallen a little bit because I think people are skeptical on the Raiders' offense this season. Like you, I think I want some more Devontae Adams as well, but we've seen some of the receivers fall here. AJ goes. I was going to say I'm going to get one of the Browns here for sure. What do you think about this retirement news for Corey Davis? Is this better news for Garrett Wilson, or does it not affect Garrett Wilson at all, in your opinion?
I don't think it should affect Gary Wilson that much. Like, I'm not super in on Gary Wilson anyway, but I think we should definitely be more interested in honestly, Alan Lazard is probably the one that benefits the most. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure about which routes McCole Hardman and Alan Lazard are going to pick up for those guys. So those 2 are probably the main beneficiaries. And then Tyler Conklin, who's one of my highest exposed tight ends, I think it's good for him too. So sorry to see Corey Davis go, but he had a good I mean, he had an okay career. He gets to retire with his money and his health, so good for him.
I had to force myself. I had said it at the beginning of kind of the round here. I would like some Nick Chubb exposure. Still
Yeah.
on the clock, clicking the button was painful for me, Chuck. I wanted the receivers. I wanted
Mhm.
Wilson or Adams instead. But look, Chubb is one of those players that has tremendous upside, tremendous amount of uncertainty at backup running back in Cleveland. We think Jerome Ford is going to be the guy, but he's not
Mhm.
healthy right now. And this could be the scenario we've rarely seen with Cleveland where Chubb gets early down work and potentially some third down work if they don't feel
Mhm.
confident in what's behind him. So I think that's what's pushing Chubb's draft position up for a lot of people.
Do you think like, so Christian McCaffrey went first. I did a few drafts after the stream last night and I saw CMC go first in one of those as well. Do you kind of feel like maybe the top running backs, the top, like the guys that have went off the board already right now are slightly more valuable than they were a couple of weeks ago just due to the uncertainty in that RB2 range?
For sure, once Pollard's off the board here, I don't think we can really wager with any degree of confidence on any of these guys. My favorite of the bunch is Derrick Henry, but we've
Same.
got the looming threat of age, father time being undefeated, whatnot, right? So,
Mhm.
granted, for the last 2 years, people have gotten bit by that take with Derrick Henry. Jonathan Taylor may not be playing. Josh Jacobs may not be playing. Gibbs, it's not as expensive as it was last year, but I feel like we might have made a similar mistake with first round DeAndre Swift. If Gibbs is truly just a third down back or a passing down back, maybe this is too expensive as well. So to your point, Chuck, all these second, third round running backs are kind of weird at this point.
Do you have any Gibbs in your exposure?
I was heavy on him when he was going closer to pick 40, so the
Mhm.
fourth round.
Mhm.
But in the third round here, I find it very hard to click on him at his current price. I've got enough of. You talked about closing line value on DJ Moore last night in the stream we did. I think I'm getting decent closing line value on my Gibbs exposure that I already have. Let me tell you exactly how much I have. I have 9 shares of Gibbs, which is about 14% of my portfolio in this
Okay.
contest right now. Uh, at at significantly lower average draft position, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Looks like I have about 6% of Gibbs. Average position probably closer to 42, like you said.
Cool.
Another thing about taking like Gibbs around pick 30 is that I'm very frequently getting Ramondre. Like last night I had a 7 pick, and with the 42 pick I got Ramondre. With the 55 pick I got Brees Hall. So it's like you got to slam these receivers early
Well,
because we're getting crazy running back
yeah,
value.
that's the other side of this. We've got the closing line value in the other direction on Ramondre and Brees Hall. We know these guys are going to play and have a decent amount of
Hmm.
touches. That's just
Hmm.
maybe the picture isn't as clear as it was a couple of weeks ago. I think we have to pounce on that and add those guys to our rosters when available. But I will say now that I've invested an extremely high draft pick, virtually a first round pick, in Nick Chubb at pick number 13, I am more in the style of being in favor of whatever you want to call it, anchor RB, hero RB.
Hmm.
So I think I will pound pass catchers here for the remainder of the first few rounds here, at least.
No, I love it. Have that anchor RB Nick Chubb because the idea is that Nick Chubb is going to be in the starting lineup most weeks, right? And so if we
Mm-hmm.
draft, I don't know, if you end up with 5 or 6 running backs either way, we only need one of those other running backs to contribute per week. And it's like if we're going to draft 4 guys who should be able to possibly contribute every week, so I really like just slamming receivers and then getting those running backs in what was previously considered the dead zone. I guess the running back dead zone moved up a little bit this year, but
Yeah, it seems like it's basic, superficial stuff, but being mindful of the amount of players that you need in the starting lineup each week, we need 3 of those receivers, and ideally, we want some receivers to flash for the potential flex spot as well, with the ceiling access that receivers tend to have when they have big games. So that's ultimately the reason why I love going very wide receiver heavy early. Amon-Ra St. Brown in the first round is really the only Lion pass catcher that gets selected super early. I mean, I guess I could the tight end I talked about him earlier, Laporta, but Jared Goff goes in the middle of the draft around round 10 or so at his 100 and actually much lower than that now, 129 ADP. He goes in this 10-11 range. So pretty easy to stack with Brown here if I want to do that. And honestly, I think from a default standpoint, that is kind of what I'm thinking about here as I map out mentally where I want to go. The Lions have the Cowboys in week 17. The Browns, I have Chubb. They've got the Jets in week 17. So I'm mindful of that. But you know what I am going to do here? Because I'm going to try to catch you a little bit. And it is a little aggressive. I'm going to go back to back DJ Moore and Justin Fields here and get Bears in my lineup here. Chicago does have some week 15 playoff correlation with Cleveland, and we've got some divisional games with the Lions throughout the season. So I'm invested in a couple of game environments that could lead to high scoring upside as well.
I had this exact start a couple times last week. It's impossible to get Justin Fields and DJ Moore at the 4-5 turn now. I haven't seen it yet since that one screen pass happened. And so this is the only reliable way to stack both of them.
Even at the 11th pick, it's hard because the 12th pick owner can blow up your spot a little bit. So knowing that I'm very underweight on both these players, I think this is just the second time I've selected either of them. I'm happy to get them correlated here and get a little bit more in my portfolio.
I like it. Like I mentioned before on stream, the way I'm looking at it is that's my favorite combo in the draft, Justin Fields and DJ Moore. With their new price, I don't love it, but just getting more combos of those guys with different first and second round picks, I think is really, really strong.
And now I can pretty much wait on quarterback. I would consider even taking Goff to pair with Brown in like the 10th or 11th round, waiting. Hopefully Goff falls to me at 132, a little behind ADP. If he doesn't, we'll come up with an alternate plan there, and I can continue to just pound these high upside wide receivers, maybe a tight end if there's one that I like that is going a little behind ADP. But that hasn't been happening. We saw in the draft we did yesterday, Chuck, Darren Waller went a couple of rounds ahead of where we expect. Some of these other guys, Laporta himself, went significantly earlier than we would expect. We were high on him when we started drafting in the spring. His ADP has dropped about 30 spots since the original opening ADP. Now we've got some injuries at wide receiver again on this team. The player I'm teeing up for you is Chiga Okonkwo, around pick 150 by ADP. It's only really DeAndre Hopkins and a bunch of future XFL All-Stars on the Titans offense right now. I mean, are we back in on Shig at this lower cost? How are you treating him?
I am, but was there something about him? Was there an injury scare with him this week? I thought I saw something about that, but I might be mistaken.
No, we definitely don't want to be buying injured players on purpose. So let's see if we can figure that out.
No, I'm not seeing anything on it. It must have been just something very minor. But yeah, Kyle Phillips is out. Like I think you posted a question a couple weeks ago in the Discord or something asking, figure out who is the wide receiver 2 on this team. You can't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's absolutely this. I mean, we're talking about Racey McMath, Mason Kinsey. I mean, the only people drafting them in fantasy are their family members right now at this point. No offense to those gentlemen. It's just not a very sexy offense. We're not expecting a tremendous amount of upside from the Titans week to week, but tight end specifically, a position where the production is somewhat non-existent outside of the big top 5. Shig is starting to look like one of the better options you can consider in that second grouping of tight ends.
Well, especially since some of those guys who used to go in typically in the 17th, 18th round, Jake Ferguson, Musgrave, whatever, those guys are moving up a little bit. So I think it kind of makes Chig look like a better value compared to those guys anyway.
And honestly, now that I have the Bears pairing here, I'm interested in adding to my Tyler Algier exposure. I kind of tried to find, after we talked about him on yesterday's show, I tried to dump some data on why I am super optimistic about Algier into our Discord. So if you remember the Discord, go over to the Underdog Best Ball channel and check that out. Even if you just assign Algier that projected touch volume number that the beat writers have for him this season, he should get more touches relative to competition around the league. That basically his touch volume puts him at an RB level where he would be ahead of where he's being drafted. There's more that goes into projections than that, but that's one pretty major data point that suggests he's very undervalued, even at a decent ADP of 140 for a backup running back. He's not your average backup running back in an extremely run-heavy offense.
Yep.
Anywho, that's enough on, I guess, my biases, if you will. What didn't we cover yesterday that was on your mind that you were itching to share that you'd like to share with the people here tonight, Chuck? I'm obviously teeing you up so I
Um,
can think about how I want to handle these picks right now.
Before we move off the Bears real quick, Cole Kmet did leave practice today with
Mm.
an injury. That was another piece of news we got today. I'm not sure what happened with Robert Tunyon. I think maybe he had an injury earlier or something, but that might be something to dive into with the Bears tight end situation.
I am
But the two,
still.
well,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say I am still interested in JSN, Jackson Smith and the Jigba, even after the
Mhm,
wrist
mhm,
surgery, but I am interested in seeing where he falls. So I don't think at this stage he's someone I'm going to take at the turn here. Just bring that up because it's basically in
mhm,
that ADP range where these Seattle guys tend to go. In fact, they're both at the top of the board here. Maybe JSN will go before I even have an opportunity to make that decision here. But got these Bucks receivers that I'm pretty high on still lingering here. So I may take one of them, if not both of them. That's certainly on the table for me. That's kind of how I'm thinking about pick 5 and 6 here. George Kittle goes, so this owner did punt the Seattle wide receiver decision to the next turn. I think he's probably waiting for me to make the decision. I'm going to go Lockett and Godwin. I'm going to actually skip out
okay,
on
I like
JSN
it.
here. Lockett is just Mr. Reliable in this offense. He outproduced Metcalf in fantasy last year, and he's still going about 3 rounds later. So I have to like the value there. If we expect, at least now we know early in the season, it's going to be those two guys leading the way in targets once again.
Hmm. So two of the guys I was curious to hear where you are right now. We kind of mentioned them a little bit last night, but didn't get into it. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. How are we looking at those guys? Because I've seen some hype on Keenan Allen, and then I already mentioned I like Mike Williams last night. So where do you stand?
I like Mike Williams a little better because he's a little cheaper. A lot of the steam around Kellen Moore being the new OC there in the Chargers offense is that they're giving Williams a significantly more dynamic role where he will run routes out of different spots in the offense. He won't just be a boundary wide receiver. He'll have some slot routes. And I think that's what we like in offenses in general that are super pass heavy, dynamic receivers that can line up anywhere on the field, run any route in the route tree that the coach wants them to run, and make big plays. Not to suggest that Keenan Allen can't do that, but I think Keenan Allen is also getting to the point in his career where we have to be a little careful on his age curve when that age related decline may start to set in. The volume may offset any efficiency concerns we have with Keenan Allen because this is a team that's going to pass the football. But of the two, if you were only drafting one of them, I think Mike Williams is the one that I prefer right now.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like I believe in Keenan Allen, but the age, injury concerns. I think it's just the better pick to go to Mike Williams. So I agree.
It's just an
Um,
extremely hard offense to stack. That's something we've been saying all year long because all three of these high four players that are super valuable in that offense, Eckler, Williams, Keenan Allen, and the quarterback Herbert, they all go in the first 5 rounds. And I think I still don't, I guess with Eckler and Herbert being a stack here for Tart 1, I'm okay with that because of Eckler's role in the passing game. But we see a lot of owners, Chuck, take Justin Herbert without any of these players on the same team. And I still really can't wrap my mind around the justifying that right now.
yeah, I mean, if you do it, you have to take Quentin Johnston. And if you miss out on Quentin Johnson, then you're getting Joshua Palmer, who might start a few games filling in for injury, but it's just not the best stacking option. Another guy up here, Jahan Dotson. Where are we on Jahan Dotson? Because I saw him go at pick 37 last night, which I know we're not doing that, but pick 69 in this range. Do you agree with this?
I think we had a little bit of a yeah. This is right around where his ADP has been. I'm overweight on Gabe Davis in this range, so I want to be taking a little bit more Dotson and Addison than I have, frankly, Chuck. But I think the early picks, the reaches, so to speak, a little bit of an overreaction to last Monday's preseason game where we saw
Yeah,
two
dude.
things. Dotson got a lot of targets in the first half from Sam Howell, and Terry McLaurin had the injury scare. So I think people are overreacting to that. It sounds like Terry McLaurin is on track to be able to play in week 1. Should be a status quo there where we can pump the brakes and still take Dotson at this 6th, 7th round ADP, guys. I think reaching is a little much right now.
Yeah, it's really curious too, because typically you'll see like a player like Terry McLaurin fall with the injury, but I mean, I did a handful of drafts last night, and I don't think I saw him fall far past ADP once. Where I was hoping it was another player I could just keep scooping up more of. I have a ton of him already, but I'm happy to keep adding if I'm going to get him at a cheaper cost.
So we've got Montgomery as the top running back option, which I could probably get down with David Montgomery here if this owner in front of me passes on him, just because it would be another layer to the Lions in this lineup. The top receiver potentially the top running back with David Montgomery would be interesting.
I like it.
Um, and I am going to have that option because the owner before me went with Marquise Brown. But as far as the second pick here is concerned, okay, that'll put me on a 1-2-4. No tight end just yet on my roster. Um, let's see. Dallas correlation, it's teed up for me with Brandon Cooks. I think that's where I need to go next behind David Montgomery. I flip-flopped the order. I picked them there, but it really doesn't matter when I'm picking back-to-back.
Yeah.
So.
No, I like it. That's one of the beauties of picking back to back. Like two players we want, we don't have to worry about wondering if one of them's going to come back. We can just take two of them, and then we can kind of relax for 24 picks.
In this range at receiver, I am starting to buy into Elijah Moore. I did not select him here because I'm going for that Lions Dallas correlation. Watson already came off the board for Cleveland. I think, Chuck, just to kind of talk through that scenario really quickly, had Watson not been selected, I might have talked myself into going Elijah Moore, Deshaun Watson with Nick Chubb at the top of the draft board here as well. I don't mind that at all. That's just another option, I think, at the end of the draft board. Every single one of these drafts is going to go a little differently when you're drafting, for those of you watching, and just being mindful of those stacking partners you can get together with upside. Elijah Moore looks like the Browns are going to be moving him all over the field. Had an injury concern in the preseason, but he's back in practice. He looks good to go. I think a lot of people got burned by this player when he was on the Jets formerly, and they're a little skeptical of his upside, but it looks like the Browns are going to be utilizing him very frequently this season.
So Elijah Moore, I was full fading before, but I've added him a few times recently. But the player who I'm actually kind of surprised I have 10% of is Donovan Peoples-Jones. I did not realize that I was selecting him that much late in drafts, so that's something I probably need to take a look at why I'm doing that.
It's got to be the ADP range, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of looking at that. That's the right now anyway. I don't know about a couple months ago because I don't have that directly in front of me, but DJ Chark, Alec Pierce, Jalen Hyatt, Jaden Reed, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Isaiah Hodgins. That's the ADP range that he goes in at this moment in time. And it probably, to me, feels like Cleveland is maybe a little bit better offense, at least on paper, than those teams. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably at least from the outside looking in, that would be my explanation. Once again, I characterized round 8, 9, 10 here as sort of this mini wide receiver dead zone you see here, and only 3 wide receivers taken in this round. It starts to really thin out at wide receiver at this point, Chuck.
Yep, it does. I find myself like I like Cortland Sutton enough if I need a receiver, but I mentioned last night that I think the running back value in this range is just so great. You know, even starting as early as like Alexander Madison. Like Alexander Madison at 75 sounds pretty good to me. James Cook 77, James Conner 82. I'm not sure about James Conner anymore. I'm starting to get a little bit bearish on him. I think just due to the guys available in the 24 picks past him, it's a little bit more comfortable clicking on those guys because there's less uncertainty, I think. We do
Khalil
have a
Herbert.
question.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's answer the question that we have here from I believe this is Jets 13 in our Discord. John Cotter.
Uh,
What is the question here, Chuck? I'd be happy to talk about it.
Injury aside, who do you think is more likely to hold their job this year, Baker or Brock? I mean, I know that we can't necessarily trust Shanahan, but he said that Brock Purdy would have to melt for him not to be the starting quarterback. So I think it's very clearly Brock Purdy has a much greater job stability than Baker Mayfield. Although I think Baker Mayfield is better than he's shown so far. So I believe in Baker, but the answer is Brock Purdy.
Yep, it's we're going to be consistent on this. Plus, we got a player on a team that we're pretty confident is going to be competing for a championship this year in Brock Purdy.
Mhm.
Kyle Shanahan clearly thinks Purdy is a key cog in that wheel for them this season. Baker and the Bucks, they're hoping for a surprise upside season. Maybe not. Maybe they're secretly in the front office hoping to be competing for a number one pick to select a different quarterback come April 2024. So I think it's really hard to compare those two players just because those franchises are in completely different positions right now.
Yep, completely agree. But you wanted to talk about Khalil Herbert?
Going in the first 100 picks, I think getting confirmation that Herbert is at least going to start the year for the Bears as the RB1. We touched on this very briefly on the last show, and I didn't really respond to what you had said on it. I think the thing to be careful of here is that this is going to be, we talked a lot about Atlanta being run heavy. Chicago's going to be pretty run heavy as well. And I do feel like Foreman, Johnson, they're going to have their games. They're going to have their opportunities to get touches here. I personally, this is just kind of my lean on the situation with the Bears running back. They're giving Herbert a little bit of that veteran rest respect in preseason. He probably does start the season as the RB1, but I don't know if he has a stranglehold on that job. I'm not sure I buy that right now.
Well, I think Deontay Foreman is good at football, so I think he's going to be in there for sure. Is J.K. Dobbins still available? Oh, I must have missed his name. He must have went very early.
He has been selected. I try not to let my overall exposures influence me too much, but Tyler Boyd, whenever he's on the board, it's just hard for me not to select him, Chuck. You get wide receiver 3 in one of the best offenses in the league. He's probably better than a lot of these wide receiver 2s that are still available. I'm addicted to clicking on Tyler Boyd. I have no shame admitting that here whatsoever. And then we talk about adding players on good teams as often as possible. Really interesting that the Commanders running backs are available here back to back, by the way. But Dalton Kincaid with the Buffalo Bills is someone I'm trying to force into some lineups a little bit more. I'm fine having him as my tight end 1 on this roster. You look at what the Bills have cooking at receiver behind Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. There's nothing to write home about there, I don't think. The steam on Kincaid being the rare tight end that will be used more like a wide receiver in this offense, I think there's room to believe that here with Buffalo.
I think so too. I agree. And I think this came up in the chat today, actually. I think was Trent Sherfield mentioned in the Discord today. Yes. But anyways, yes, I don't mind Trent Sherfield as a last round kind of dart throw. He goes completely undrafted. I mean, I'm talking like maybe 2-3% of your portfolio, if that. But if I need a Josh Allen stack and I missed everyone else, he's a guy that I think I actually did it just last night. So over Khalil Shakur.
And I'm somewhat gambling that I can get Goff to fall slightly behind ADP to me. Might lose that wager here. Maybe Hoodie Mellis here. If I'm saying that correctly. Even if I'm not, he might take Jared Goff to pair with Williams here, but we can survive that. There's plenty of other quarterbacks available that pair with decent players that we can find. Obviously, I got Baker Mayfield in my back pocket here, Geno Smith as well. So there's a couple of options there. We're sitting on a 1-2-6-1 build here, and I know this is repetitive information for you and I because we do these together all the time, but I usually have about 6-7 receivers in most drafts that I do here on Underdog. Frankly, drafts I do anywhere, even on the other site there, kind of start like this, and I tend to fill in the rest of my roster with backup quarterback, backup tight ends, and I call them the running back lottery tickets that could play significantly larger roles if things break a certain way during the season. Second half of the draft is where I draft those guys.
Well, that's the beauty of drafting a Nick Chubb early. You don't really have to worry about running back because there's enough guys late that we are interested in now. So a couple of the guys I was curious, are you in on J.K. Dobbins and Rashad Bateman at ADP?
Bateman, absolutely. First round draft capital. Todd Monken is like the strongest keyword for upside in fantasy football right now with a certain segment of the film grinding community, at least. We're going to have Bateman and Beckham and Zay Flowers in 3 wide receiver sets with Mark Andrews at tight ends. They're going to go pass heavy. They're going to involve the running backs in the passing game. I probably should be more in on J.K. Dobbins than I am, Chuck. I would love for someone in the community to convince me to buy him. He is, I believe, There's two running backs that go in the first 60, 70 picks that I have 0% of. J.K. Dobbins is one of them. The other is Najee Harris. I haven't been able to talk myself into either of these players.
Najee is falling past pick 50 now, which I am going to be clicking on him more than I was before, I think.
I think that makes sense as the ADP drops there. But
Mhm.
on the other side of that barbell, I'm significantly invested in Jalen Warren.
Mhm.
And the thesis there is, does this turn more into a Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson type of backfield than just Najee Harris dominating all the touches like he did early in his career? I think that's why the field is pushing Warren up to pick 124 right now is roughly the ADP. So I do believe that. I am buying Warren at that price, but I don't know if you feel differently.
I've came around on Warren. We got confirmation. Like we should have. Well, you already knew he was good, but I was skeptical, and now we got a little more confirmation that he's probably better than Najee at football right now. So it's just a matter of the volume, right? Like Najee was a
Mhm.
volume play. We never thought he was an efficient back. It's just that he was going to get the carries and he was going to be on the field.
And a chain here with the Dolphins, a little banged up, got hurt in the last preseason game. I, I would like to see this price come down a little bit, Chuck. I'm much more interested in Mostert and Jeff Wilson, at least right now, with the Dolphins running backs. How are you attacking Miami backfield?
So again, another player. I have no idea how I ended up with 13% of Devin Chain. I have 14% of Jeff Wilson, so I'm happy with that. But I am so confused. I don't remember clicking on Devin Chain as often as my exposures would show. And then I'm at 6% Mostert, so I guess Jeff Wilson is the guy that I'd prefer from that backfield. And it's a lot of it is just a late round correlation when I have Baltimore guys. So.
Jared Goff to pair with Amon Ra, the Sun God, and I mean I can't make Tyler Algier the cover boy of the stream and have significant Week 17 reason to be interested in him with Fields and DJ Moore and not take him. So we will add Algier to this roster as well.
I love it. I was curious to see the rest of this Zucker 44s team. I noticed he took Jalen Hyatt and Isaiah Hodgins way ahead of ADP, but he didn't take Daniel Jones. He took Dak Prescott. So I was kind of
And Daniel
curious.
Jones is gone here, so I don't know,
Yeah,
man. That seems he's got Dak with it doesn't even have Pollard. I'm a little confused
yeah,
what's going on there to be frank with you. Gallup was sitting right there. Anyway, that's
yeah.
enough. We gotta, like I say often when we go down these paths, I gotta worry about my own team. I can't worry about these other people too much while we're still drafting here. But it is definitely from like I guess most of you guys aren't drafting as heavily on Underdog, at least the Occupy subscribers that we're aware of that watch these shows. I don't believe many of you are drafting as heavily on Underdog as Chuck and I. I would like to be surprised, obviously. Um, we like to talk about some of these things that we see in drafts that we don't think you should be doing with your own dollars. So, yeah, just to be kind of straightforward there, getting a couple of giant wide receivers here and a quarterback uncorrelated with any of their other teammates. At least in this range of the draft anyway, the second half of the draft seems pretty bad. I actually don't think taking Josh Allen without a teammate is that bad because I think
Mhm.
Allen can have standalone value as a running quarterback, but some of the other stuff there, not super into that.
Yeah, and I actually don't mind Isaiah Hodgins at ADP. Just like half of the games he played in last season, he put up a good score. And now, granted, it's a lot more crowded now, but at ADP, I really don't mind Isaiah Hodgins.
I studying the usage in preseason, at least when the starters are on the field together. The Giants are one of those teams I think everybody wanted to pay close attention to. It was Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, and Paris Campbell were the wide receivers that played with Daniel Jones's unit. Obviously, Darren Waller at tight end as well. The other thing that's interesting, though, just really quickly on tight ends, staying on the Giants, Daniel Bellinger did get at least some run with Daniel Jones's unit. So we talk about tight end late being an interesting position to consider just because the average tight end available may have more median fantasy points available than some of these wide receiver threes, wide receiver fours, super backup running backs. Daniel Bellinger is probably a player that we should at least be passively interested at the end of the draft. because, like I said, it's a pretty gross position at that point in the draft.
I don't have zero of Daniel Bellinger. I have one share exactly. So it was probably in the past week during the game, even after he dropped a touchdown. I'm at the end of a draft. I'll take Daniel Bellinger.
Right, you're influenced by the last thing you saw. I guess I'll take this person.
Yeah, once.
Um, I still can't. Well, let's talk about it now. The Carolina Panthers, really really ominous reporting earlier in the day today from beat writers around the team with a DJ Chark injury, but it does sound like it's not potentially as bad as it was originally made out to be. A hamstring injury, we don't like any injury. We don't like any soft tissue injury for any wide receiver. That can definitely linger and be a problem all season long. But if it truly is just a hamstring injury here, Chuck, and the worst case scenario there is Chark misses a few games in the first month of the season, I would be very interested in him if we get some kind of discount on him because we know what the upside is there with this player.
I do think it's a pretty high risk with DJ Shark, but he probably has the highest upside if he can manage to stay healthy the whole year. Just Thielen is not very good last season, and Jonathan Mingo, I guess we just have no idea on Jonathan Mingo. I don't really have an opinion on him.
I tried to talk myself into it, watching a little bit of the Panthers in their last preseason game when Bryce Young played a couple of drives. Mingo had a couple of targets on those drives. It seemed like Young and Mingo have somewhat of that chemistry going. But look, we're just purely speculating on who the best asset is going to be there. I tend to, as a big, high level strategy, I tend to have a bias towards the younger wide receivers in general. Adam Thielen, he's a vet. He's kind of a player slash coach in that wide receiver room right now. He's going to have his moments, but I think over the long haul of a season, I would rather be invested in Jonathan Mingo than a player like Thielen because I don't think we can rely on him having consistent production this season. That's just kind of my read on the Panthers wide receivers. They all go close together. I truly don't have a problem stacking any of them with Bryce Young late if you're looking for a cheap secondary stack. But I would probably prefer Mingo to Thielen at this point.
I'm not really targeting any of these Carolina guys except for Chuba Hubbard if I need a running back late. And then we talked about last night, if I miss on Chuba Hubbard, I need a running back. I'll just take Kieran Williams every single time.
Mm-hmm. This is closer to where we've seen Gainwell's ADP normalize. We saw him go super early in yesterday's show. But even now, Chuck, like we were getting Gainwell in round 17, round 18. It's pretty hard to click. We want Philadelphia players on our team. We talked about that macro of always be interested in players on good teams. So Gainwell certainly fits that mold. But knowing that I have a significant amount of him at round 17 or 18 ADP, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to click on him as much here unless I'm specifically looking for correlation.
I feel like there was a video posted of the Eagles practice a couple days ago, and Kenneth Gainwell was first up in the in some of the team drills, but I need to double check that.
All right, I'll put my money where my mouth is a little bit here and take a couple of players that I already gassed up, Chigakonkwo and Raheem Mostert. I knew that was going to happen. I knew they were going to be available to me in rounds 13 and 14 when I said I wanted Mostert more in that Miami backfield, and I was way more interested in Okonkwo after some of the uncertainty at wide receiver with Tennessee. I planned that ahead of time, I promise you.
Imagine getting your guys when you're up to pick. This is kind of cool.
Yeah, love when that happens. It doesn't often go that way. We got a couple of rounds left here. It's really 4 rounds, but it just feels like 2 rounds when you pick back to back. And I've got a pretty balanced build, a 2-4-6-2. That's 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 6 receivers, 2 tight ends. I will say, and it hasn't been on purpose, if you've watched some of these shows and you've been evaluating what I've been doing, maybe you have noticed, I tend to land on a 2-6-8-2 pretty much every time. There is some data that build is in that range of where you want to be, but I guess it is worth just pointing out you don't have to be rigid about a specific outcome by position every single time, Chuck. I guess all I'm saying is I don't want to miscommunicate to the viewers based off of what I'm doing there, that you always have to build that way. It's okay to probably have like 7 to 10 receivers, 5 to 7 running backs, I think is the sweet spot. And then 2 to 3 at quarterback and tight end each is the acceptable range at each position that I think you should be shooting for.
As it is, like with my the teams I have uploaded into my Spike Week right now, 2583 is my most common build at 30% of my teams, and then it's 2682 at 17% of my team. So it's basically just trading that sixth running back for a tight end, a third tight end, depending on because I'm typically taking a lot of times my first tight end is Tyler Conklin, and so if I'm doing that, I definitely need three tight ends on
Yeah.
the team.
Yeah, I tend to get a couple of these mid round tight ends, obviously a little higher than that with Kincaid, but with this duo, draft capital invested in the position, it's kind of like I need these guys to be one of my starting tight ends every single week. So going out with a third one might not be the best move. That's kind of how I've talked myself into doing it, at least. And just getting caught up on who has been selected here so I don't get caught with my pants down a little bit when we're back on the clock. Getting pretty close to wrapping up this draft here. I don't. We're seeing ADP spike because of preseason news. I think a lot of that is starting to normalize, Chuck. Obviously, one more week of preseason for each of these teams still to go, but most of these teams, I think, have given us the information that we want on how they view playing time for their players coming up. So I would expect to see these changes that we've seen in ADP, barring injury to any players over the next few days. This is probably like the range we're going to see for a lot of these guys throughout the rest of the draft season.
Damian Harris going at 171. It hurts so bad. He's one of my higher exposed players, and I'm losing like 40 picks in ADP value by the end of a draft season on him. I hope he's still good, but
It seems like from some of the reporting around the team, and Harris has an injury that's contributing to this, admittedly. So if they're both straight up healthy, maybe the decision is different. But it seems like Latavius Murray, who they signed this spring, has a legit, like they're in a legit competition for backup running back behind James Cook. At this point, I would rather take Latavius in the last round,
mhm.
basically any time over Damian Harris. Damian Harris, I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum here with you. I don't believe I have any Damian Harris thus far. I've got some James Cook, I've got some Latavius Murray. I have not been able to talk myself into Damian Harris. Sorry to deliver that
Yeah,
news to you today.
no, might be a misstep by me, but if it is, it's okay. I hit on some other guys, so hopefully they can make it up. And I mean, you don't need much from Damian Harris, but I'm probably not going to be drafting him that much. I mean, if he falls to 171, I'm going to click him at 171. But other than that, I'm probably completely done taking him at ADP.
The other thing with his draft range is even if he's not contributing early in the season, a lot of things can change. He's going to hopefully still be on the roster, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's ways that can still pan out for you. It would
Yeah.
probably lead to some of the picks I've made not panning out, but that's the nature of these contests. You truly don't know until we get started. All you can do is just put yourself in the best position to be a beneficiary of that upside and be ready for it here. All right, let me orient myself and be aware of what I can do here. Running backs available. Dante Foreman, late, another bear, a third bear. I will say I am a little more interested in Foreman than any secondary Bears pass catcher I can get here for some of the reasons we talked about earlier. It's going to be a very run heavy team. I think he will have his moments. And, I'm just addicted to taking pass catchers, man. I don't really have a tremendous amount of looking glass wisdom to give you here, other than I just think that it makes sense to keep adding at pass catcher. And if you're going to tell me Paris Campbell, a dynamic asset that can be used in the slot, outside, in the backfield, even is going to be a starter for the New York Giants, I will take him almost every single time I have the opportunity to take him at the end of a draft contest.
I like it. The other player on your screen right now, I'm interested in this range is Hunter Renfro. Have you been adding him?
I haven't been, but I've talked myself mentally into the fact that I probably should. I've got a significant amount of Jacoby Myers. Don't have as much Adams or Jacobs because we're not expecting a lot of Jacobs this year, at least at this point. So I
Yeah.
think that Renfro is probably very, very good late. You're drafting him in a range where you're not really expecting a ton of the production anyway. So I think the gamble's pretty good here.
Yeah, I mean, we only have to have one or two 10 target games for him to pay off, so I like him in this range.
The Isaiah Likely selection over some of these legit starting tight ends is one that's tough for me. I think if you have Lamar Jackson, I can get down with it, Chuck, but I like Likely as an athlete and a player, but it just feels pretty thin at tight end where you don't need to get that goofy with it to me.
Is that the Kelsey owner that took Likely? Because this is something I've been doing. I'm taking Likely when I already have an elite tight
Yeah, you know
end.
what? Okay, that is what he did here. That makes
Yeah,
sense to me. You're not really you're kind of screwed if Kelsey isn't your guy anyway. So, but I just kind of feel like that was better when Likely was an 18th round pick. You know what I mean? Then probably splitting hairs a little bit. You're at the end of the draft board. I'm not sure how much these guys are going to do anyway, but I don't know, man. I feel like there's still some other options here if you want to go that route. Um, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, who you said you're heavy on, Hayden Hurst. Again, they're going to be legit starters. I think I would still rather have those guys.
yeah. I mean, I still have like looks like Isaiah Likely might be my 12th highest owned tight end, but I'm taking him a lot when I'm already comfortable at tight end. Just uh, if something happens to Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely is going to look like a really good value at the end of drafts. But that's only when I already am comfortable at tight end, when I don't need production from my whatever pick he ends up being. And I like pairing him with like Travis Kelsey, even though it's kind of weird because he has to do a lot to get in the flex anyway. But I don't really care about my second tight end when I have Kelsey and Andrews anyway.
Just getting caught up on what's still available to me. Got a full round to wait until we close out my final two picks here. Kareem Hunt, player I have none of, and I will continue to have none of because he has not signed a contract. It's probably why his ADP is dropping here as well. Um, I have a little more. I think we're in the same boat. I have a little more Leonard Fournette than I would like, but to be honest,
Same.
the answer to that is having more than zero is the problem in general. There, that's why I feel that way. Um, all right, we're working on a 2572, so I don't have to invest another pick at running back. I like this group with Chubb as my anchor RB. I think I probably want another wide receiver. I don't think I want another tight end. Basically, it's min one wide receiver for me, maybe a running back, maybe two wide receivers is how I plan to close this out, depending on how things go over the next couple of picks.
That's how I probably attack it. Six in the chat. I came here to witness what monsters don't use dark mode.
Oh man. Okay. I have just been assaulted for not using dark mode. Here you go.
Yeah.
Yay! I don't know. I don't know. I truly don't have a preference either way. Just not a setting that dark mode
Yeah.
looks nice. I'll give you your flowers. I'm fine with dark
Yeah.
mode. I'm not
Yeah.
anti
It looks
dark mode.
cool.
I don't care either way. What mode I'm using here. But thank you for dropping by to troll us a little bit here. We definitely appreciate it.
He
All
said,
right.
thank you. Hey, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Six.
See, I know how to engage with dark mode. It's just I'm ignorant of it. You talked about Hunter Renfro. He has not been selected yet. I'm not sure what's going on there. If he continues to slide, that might be the direction we go here. I wanted to talk about Michael Wilson with the Arizona Cardinals because that would be my remaining correlation in the playoff weeks with DJ Moore and Justin Fields. The Bears play the Browns, Cardinals, and Falcons in those playoff weeks. If Michael Wilson is here, that would give me Nick Chubb correlation in that first playoff week, Michael Wilson correlation in that second playoff week, and Tyler Algier correlation in that third playoff week. And honestly, it got picked out from underneath me. But that's what I like to set up if I can on a draft board with some of my primary stacks, Chuck, because we're hoping to qualify for the playoff rounds, have exposure to the best games in those weeks, and just sun run our way to $3 million, right? I think that's the best way to build a roster that can do that is maximize your correlations.
Yeah, Mike Wilson is one of my favorite guys to do this for. There's a few guys at the end of the draft, but we're not necessarily expecting first half production from him. I'm banking on him being, I don't know, if Rondell Moore is not on the field or something, or some they sit Marquise Brown. It's all about the playoff weeks for players like Michael Wilson. I love it.
Hunter Renfro, and then there is another. Well, there's two options here. Our boy Kyron Williams with the Rams. We think he's going to be very, very valuable late in the draft board. But the other one that's here would be Evan Hall with the Colts if Jonathan Taylor is truly not going to be there. That's kind of who I'm between. Latavius Murray, another running back, I think makes sense here. But I do not have nearly as much Kyron Williams on Underdog as I thought I did after we talked last night. I've been taking him a lot more on the other site, Chuck.
Yep.
So I'm happy to add him here. just to give that information one more time, because we're not going to assume everybody watches every show that we put out. The Rams don't play players they think are important in preseason on offense. Kyron Williams has not been playing in the preseason. He's completely healthy. They're telling us Kyron Williams has a meaningful role on the roster on offense alongside Cam Akers at running back. That's all the information I need to be in on him in the last round because of that asymmetric upside. If anything happens to Cam Akers, Kyron Williams has a ton of upside this year.
I agree. Ken in the chat, instant Michael Wilson snipe is hilarious. Indeed, it is.
It's all right. I'll just get another white guy and Hunter Renfro instead and be disappointed when he doesn't pan out. Chuck, this has been great. I love every single show that we're able to do together.
Yeah.
Landed on another 2682 as I often do. Was able to stack Lions and Cowboys in week 17, Bears and Falcons in week 17. We often joke about not liking some of the teams we build. I actually legitimately do like this team here. Feel pretty good about it going into the season. So there's that. We'll watch the last round, get cleared out here, so some of y'all can see how some players are getting steamed up from preseason. Guys like Puka Nacua, Keyshawn Boutte, Kendrick Bourne, even starting to get selected a little bit. Chuck, do you have anything you want to talk about before we close the show today?
Yeah, there was a couple players. So Keyshawn Boutte, like last round dart throw, I'm not sure if I'm even going to get there. I got there a lot in big board, and then he fell down. But Sean Tucker, are we doing anything with Tampa Bay running backs going this late?
Man, Sean Tucker must die. I have no idea who Sean Tucker is. You're catching me with my pants down here. I'm more into Trey Palmer for rookies for Tampa Bay with the season-ending injury to Russell Gage. Seems like Trey Palmer is a guy that could earn some reps there. Last I saw, please educate me. It's Rachaad White. It's either Chase Edmonds or Keyshawn Vaughn that might be the backups behind him. But you're telling me I should be more mindful of Sean Tucker, huh?
I'm not sure. He was going completely undrafted before, and I'm seeing him get added a little bit now. I think he did do pretty well in the preseason game this past weekend. Yeah, he had 10 touches. He had a good game. It's just another guy, kind of what I was talking about with Michael Wilson. If he's starting in those playoff weeks, he could end up being pretty valuable, even if he contributes nothing throughout the rest of the season.
I'll have to double back and take a look at Greg Auman, other reporters that cover the Bucks, but I think this could potentially be an example of not overreacting to the wrong information in preseason. Even though we had a quarterback competition between Mayfield and Kyle Trask for the first couple of weeks there, Chuck, the actual starters on offense at every other position haven't really been playing for them. We've seen for a couple of preseasons now with Todd Bowles and going back to Bruce Arians in the Buccaneers coaching system there that they play running backs in the preseason pretty heavily that don't tend to have major roles in the regular season. So I don't know, man. Obviously, I'm riffing off the cuff here a little bit. I haven't seen enough context clues to put me on Sean Tucker just yet. I'm willing to go back and do the homework here, though, and come back with more of an answer on the next show if we have a reason to discuss Sean Tucker.
It's just something that I'm keeping an eye on because he was hyped up a little bit pre-draft and then he went undrafted and now they're saying he might be okay. So we'll see. And Ken in the chat, +1 Sean Tucker love. Appreciate you, Ken.
All right. I would put both you and Ken in the camp of people that I trust immensely with this type of stuff, at least anyway. So I'm going to go back and take a closer look at Sean Tucker and have maybe some updated projections for the Discord users and some updated takes on the next show. Thank you for that. Thank you all for watching. We drafted a Best Ball Mania 4 team on this show. There's other contests here on Underdog you can consider. We've got weekly winners, which pays out the best lineup every single week, which is kind of interesting. That's just a $15 contest. The eliminator's almost full here. This is maybe it is full. It's not even opening for me. That's kind of interesting if it's still
Dude, that's
open,
pretty insane.
And that just came out yesterday. And we've got obviously pick 'em slip contests that you can enter. We've already got some stats up for week 1 contests, Lions and Chiefs. We've got some of the other games on here, some players starting to emerge. There'll be some information here tomorrow on preseason. If you want to put some slips together for preseason games this weekend, you will be able to use the information we're sharing in our Discord that we're sharing in our daily plug for preseason daily fantasy on some of the other sites to also come over here and potentially put some preseason pick'em slips together as well on Underdog. So there's plenty of ways to play fantasy football on Underdog, and we love being partnered with them to bring you content this season. So cannot stress enough how much we're grateful to be talking about Underdog this season. Chuck, this was awesome. I love doing shows with you. We'll announce in the Discord when the next show is coming up. That's going to do it for the show today, guys. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you soon.